Saturday morning in Mexico.
Beautiful.
Come together, and there's no agenda. There's no coming here to, think that anything is required at all. And in fact, that is the highest truth. There is nothing required. But we think there's something required of us. And this morning, and just being with all of you in my mind and with the Spirit, I just completely feel this like message of, deep coming into yourself, like that is the absolute truth, that we don't really need to do anything. And of course, there's spiritual traps that can happen on our way with I need do nothing, and these very high levels of mind training, and it can become a cliche. I need do nothing, it's just an illusion. All of these things that we've heard for so long, right? But the truth of the matter is we really don't need to do anything except for let go of what we think we need to do, right? Which is a real struggle for that part in the mind that's the doer, which is the projection. It's the projection of this tiny mad idea that we talked about last week. And really, truly, you guys, that's all we need to do, is to recognize that it's a projection and then bring it back and forgive it. And boy, oh boy, that seems really, really easy. And actually, it does become easy once you see the result of that, and then you're more attracted to that than you are to whatever dynamic you're in with whatever situation, person, place, or thing. Because that's where we get caught, because we get caught in this idea that there's this reality here, and that it's this form reality, when Jesus actually says it's a hallucination. And of course, I don't know if you guys have ever tripped on LSD for fun, not for ceremony, but for fun. It can be quite chaotic, right? You can feel completely terrified by this hallucination, and actually there is a deep terror underneath this hallucination, because it's that belief that we actually are alone and separate, and we're trying to manage this chaos. And we talked about this last week. I really don't usually say much different. I don't really go too far out into different types of teachings, because I feel like this has to be super practical for us to come together and like really, really start to see where is my mind. In fact, Laverne and I were at the store, and maybe some of you saw it on Facebook, but I mean, this is how trippy it is. We picked up this pair of shorts, and it had written on it in Walmart in Mexico, "Where is your mind?" And I just thought, oh my God, it's coming through everywhere, right? It was so, these really hideous pair of shorts. Where is your mind? I'm like, oh, I'm judging the shorts. Anyhow, it's, I really, really feel like there's an acceleration happening. And in fact, I woke up yesterday, and somebody had written on one of the Chapala Facebook pages, non-spiritual, but he was saying that he feels like he's heard something about Lake Chapala and something about the ozones or the whatever's coming out of the lake that speeds up time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, did you see that? And I thought,
Vortexes.
that is so profound. And he says, and I feel like I'm being robbed because time is going so fast, right? And I thought about that, and I thought, wow, and I woke up yesterday, and I felt, wow, it's almost Saturday again. It's like it seems like there is this speed up. And so it's like, how do we want to spend our time, right? Do we want to spend it in love and peace and joy and connection, which is always available, or do we want to spend it in fear and conflict and stress, which is also seemingly always available? And yet, that's what the mind training is, and that's what Jesus talks about, is that untrained mind, which just wants to wander off into never land and never get anywhere. Or are you going to actually believe what the Course in Miracles says? I mean, really, truly believe it. And I know at one time, and I had studied it for years, I actually felt like, oh my God, I actually have to believe what Jesus is saying about me, rather than what I'm saying about me, because what I'm saying about me is it's never good enough, you'll never get it right, you're stupid, whatever the imprints were. Yeah. Yeah, like, and then you think that you're the only one that thinks that, and then you start living with other people and you realize that everybody at the core of it feels this deep unworthiness, and we have to prove ourselves to God. And that was certainly my thing, is I felt like at all costs I have to prove myself to God. And so also another line in the Course is it's a journey without distance, right? And it's like, well, what does that mean, right? Well, now I know what it means. It means I didn't need to do any of what I've done, but I needed to do all of what I've done in order to see that I didn't need to do any of it.
So, to get to the point where you saw you didn't need to do anything.
And so it's like everything works together for good. And there's a point that Jesus makes that we do not know our own best interests, right? And I heard that forever. You don't know it, which made me just feel like a complete idiot, right? But then the next part of it is, and everything is for your own best interest. We got to follow up with everything that comes next. We can't get caught. And so it's like, I was like, oh, everything is for my own best interest. Even the fact that you completely pissed me off, that how does that work, right? And then you see that it's all for forgiveness. And if you use everything through the eyes of the Spirit, or the eyes of the wisdom within, and I'm very much activated around really getting to the point that the Spirit is you. It's not some outside force that's going to bestow some kind of benevolence upon you if you forgive enough, and maybe that was just strong for me. I grew up in the Mormon church and so on and so forth, and it was always outside of me, this Holy Spirit or this Jesus. And it's like, we talked about it last week about how, we come in with this full dreamscape, meaning Buddha, Jesus, all the ones, the awakened ones. And the more we turn towards forgiveness, the more these symbols of the awakened mind show up, because the mind is awakening, right? It's like, so it's not that they weren't always there, it's just that you couldn't see them because we were so focused on our separated mind and our identity as a person in a world. And that's where we want to just really start to lift up. And I want to do that with each other. I want us to have this be very, very practical and very real. Like, what is it that's keeping you from peace in the moment? What is it? Because it doesn't matter what it is. It's a lie. Okay, well, that's easy to say, and it doesn't feel very good when somebody says, well, that's just a lie, whatever you're going through. There's got to be compassion, but you also have to know that it's a lie, right? So you got to face off with it. And I think that all of us that are here have a calling towards happiness, right? And I don't even call it enlightenment, or sometimes I'll refer to awakening, but that's just awakening to the fact that you're dreaming a dream, and that as you put the Spirit's vision, or you take the wisdom, the light within, and you start looking upon everything through those eyes, then everything starts to glisten in this beautiful way. But while you're truly stuck on being right or being a victim, and the victim is very big in the arsenal of the ego, because of that belief that I am this tiny separated self, and I gotta make my way. That's very, very stressful. And when he says that the forgiven mind, when Jesus says the forgiven mind is absolute release of judgment, right? So whatever it is that you're judging is painful. You always know that because you can tell by the way you feel. And while you believe that there's these characters on the screen, including this character of the self, this identity of the body, you will continually think there's something to work out. You will continually think there's something to work out. And that as a spiritual person, you really have to work it out. Even more. You know what I mean? Because if you're not feeling good and the other person isn't feeling good, then that means that you're bad, that you're not spiritual enough, right? You weren't able to get there.
Yeah.
So that's very, very stressful. So if you can see of it, if you can literally, when you start to get caught in these feelings of contraction, if you can actually stop and close your eyes and really take the focus off from the form. I think we were talking about this yesterday, Calico. If you can take your focus off from the form figures, the situation, and you just get into what is your experience, like drop the story as best you can. What is your experience? Because it's always about a state of mind, right? And we hear it over and over. It's not about the state of form.
Yeah.
It's about a state of mind. So the tendency of the mind that is separated wants to prove itself that it's a real boy or a real girl. So that's its whole intent. The ego's intent is to stay alive, so to speak, and be validated, and it never will be. So as you really stop that scenario of whatever's happening, and you see that, okay, this is just a flow of consciousness, this is just a flow of mind, it has nothing to do with form. That's the hallucination, and it's your temptation to be caught in that hallucination that's keeping it alive. And if you can pull back away from that, then you'll be able to settle back into the flow of consciousness, of peace and presence. And sometimes it feels like it's all you can do to lay that needle down, of injecting yourself with the separation. Like, oh, I need another hit. And believe you me, we are addicted to it because it makes us feel alive. That's why people really are attracted to disasters, because all of a sudden they've been living this kind of meaningless life, and then there's a disaster, and all of a sudden they come together, right, in purpose. And Jesus says in the Course in Miracles, the only stabilizing force in this world is a shared purpose. And so we can come together and just know that we're completely connected in that shared purpose, and there's safety in that, right? Because it's a chaotic freaking world if we continually think that form has to work itself out and I have to be the one in charge of that form working out. That is really, really difficult. And that's where I feel like if we can really start to, on a very, very trusting and profound level, trust that we're not any of this. We really aren't any of this. But we're going to practice. There's a spiritual practice. And I really, I don't think there's any new students here to A Course in Miracles. And I really feel like, when Jesus says the time for words is almost over, it's like just to start to contemplate these bigger ideas that, wow, I really can rest in God but I can see that my addiction to being right or a victim or offended. I mean, I had a couple, I've been sharing with some people and just watching this dynamic of communication and how, we really don't, we weren't born and programmed and taught how to communicate, truly, to commune with each other. We were taught to defend, protect, react. We're reaction machines because it's like a computer program. If somebody raises their voice or looks at you wrong, all of a sudden you have a whole world spun out in your mind. You have a whole thing that you've decided is happening, and none of it's happening. And even if you have the evidence that it's actually happening, it's not actually happening. And to me, that gave me great comfort, right? This isn't actually happening. Now, why am I seeing it happen and I have all the evidence that it's happening? Well, because you had a tiny mad idea, and that tiny mad idea was fearful. It was a fearful, tremendously terrifying idea. So what is the power of the mind going to do? It's going to throw out something so convincing of that experience of fear. And so underneath everything, and that's what this world is made out of. The world is never ever going to change. It's not going to change until you change your mind about your mind, because it can't. It's built. It's like a program that's the program, fear. So it's never going to change. You're not going to change the world. And we hear this over and over. And it's like, well, that can be a great relief to you, because honestly, you guys, if it's no important, which these words are used in the Course in Miracles, if it's no more important than the dream you had last night, if you knew you were hallucinating, how would you respond? It's like, even if you just sat with those ideas and you trusted that the truth of who you are on the deepest level has said that to you, like, oh God, what a relief. And so when you find yourself in a situation where you can feel it, right? You can always feel it start to arise. It's like you can start to feel the reaction machine and the program within start to arise. And that's where, in the beginning, when it starts is when you stop. When it starts is when you stop and go, okay, before it gets full blown and then you're identified with it, then it's very, very difficult to start to step out. It seems to take more time. So that's the mind training, right? Is to just be completely aware of how you feel, And if there's nothing true on the screen, I mean, that's profound. And we spin out these stories, and that's what forgiveness does, is it erases the story and erases the experience of that conflict of the belief in separation, because there's only one problem, one solution, honestly. Thank God. Yeah. But it looks like 1,000, right? So we just want to really, really embrace that as, okay, if that's the truth, and I continually want to believe something else, then that's my choice. Mm-hmm. But there's only one choice in this world that's worthy of your mind's attention, and that's forgiveness, which is letting it all go. And letting it all go. And I'll tell you, some of my most expansive experiences have been when I knew I was right. I knew I was right, and I let it go. And somebody paid me the hugest compliment once because they watched me do it. And the evidence was there. And it's like, wow, you really know how to forgive. Because there was nothing left. I had no problem with the person. It's like, okay, I'm done. I'm done here. I can see that it's, this is something I have to let go of, right? But the experience that happens when you do that is so expansive. Then you're much more attracted to that than hanging on to being right, because you can be right. The ego can be right all at once in this world, but it's never going to bring you anything. And I remember I had a lawsuit way back when, because I had an operation on my eye and it went wrong, and I couldn't see, and I mean, honestly, I had all the evidence in the world, right? But I was reading at the time Ken Wapnick's book, Jesus and Forgiveness, right? So I'm reading this book. It's about this thick. I have no idea what I'm reading because I'm, it was like 25 years ago. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was sincere, right? I wanted to forgive. So I had these lawyers, high-powered lawyers. Oh, yeah, they were taking it on whatever you call that, commission or something, because they knew it was a slam dunk case. So we were like 9 months into it. And oh boy, I was building all the evidence, headaches and this and that. Now I can't fly because, just
pressure.
All the evidence, right? And I was reading this book, Jesus and Forgiveness, and I thought, holy shit, one day I was like, these don't go together, right? These just simply don't go together. And so I dropped the case. And the experts had said, we can't, there's nothing we can do. You won't, I lost my up close vision. And through another operation, they were at least able to get the distance vision back. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to drop this. So I dropped it. 2 days later, I swear to you, this thought came into my mind about, I heard this name, Dr. Masidas. And I remember somebody from years before telling me about this ophthalmologist named Dr. Masidas and how good he was. It just popped into my head, right? And he was in Salt Lake City, so I went and saw him. And I went to see him not for the complication with my eye, but because I needed a correction on my other eye that needed a new contact lens prescription. So I go in, I'm like, okay, we're just doing. He goes, well, what's going on with the other eye? And I said, oh, don't worry about it. The experts up at the U said there's nothing you can. He goes, all right, let me take a look. And like within a week, he had me fitted in another lens, which they told me I wouldn't be able to wear. I went out to my car. I could see my dashboard. Wow. And I just started to cry. Wow. It's like, holy shit. What did I want to see? I wanted to see my brother as guilty and wrong, and you're going to pay for this and my pain that you've done. And it was just so profound. But I did have all the evidence that I was right, that he had harmed me, right? And then it's like, what's so beautiful about this experience of forgiveness is you are convinced that you are loved. You are so convinced that you are loved as you lay down that sword, and it's just against your own neck, right? You think it's going to be, somebody's going to pay for this. No, you're going to pay for it. And so that's why I think forgiveness is so inspiring, and it's so inspiring to know that, none of this is true, and how I look upon it is how I'm going to experience this seeming projection, or it's an extension of love or a projection of the ego, and the Spirit is teaching us how to come back to our natural state. It's unnatural to have those grievances in the mind. It's absolutely unnatural. That's why it feels so bad, because it's not natural. It's not who we are. But it does take a lot of commitment to try it on when you're in difficult situations. Like, all right, Spirit, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm going to let this go. Really, I want to let this go. I want to put it on your altar. I want to surrender this to you. And then the healer, the truth in the mind, rushes in, right? Because there's an invitation, because there has to be an invitation. You know what it's like when you're talking to people, and maybe you're even having a spiritual conversation, and they're all jacked up about something, and they don't have any space in their mind for an invitation of, I need a miracle, I need you to help me. Because once they say that, then the Spirit rushes in, and that's where you get into this union and this true communion. But, that's why you can't really convince anybody of anything, nor should you want to, because you're only trying to convince yourself. That's the unhealed healer, right? And we go through that. For a while we do. We go through that, wanting to help. That's almost like a stepping stone. But it has to be let go of at a certain point. You can't stay there, because that's still in such duality. So we want to collapse the whole thing, and the miracle collapses time. It collapses the time of suffering. It collapses that belief that we're alone and separate, and we're trying to make it. I mean, that's a heavy duty. There's loneliness in there on a very deep level. And so with Alchemy of Awakening, our byline is accepting a life of love, and I just loved that so much when it came in. I loved it so much. It's like, yes, accepting a life of love. This is about really accepting into our awareness the happy dream, the happy dream of forgiveness, the happy dream, becoming a happy learner. I wasn't a happy learner. I was a miserable learner. I was really upset for a long time, like constantly, trying so hard to get it. Oh God, I just want to get it. I just want to get it. Get it. And that was a total hijacking of the ego. So, but it's how it played out. I was pretty thick. That's why I needed to spend so much time with David. You kind of laser beam through it all. So I know that we're just really pure of heart with our desire for this connection, but let's not have it be too lofty, That's why we don't talk about enlightenment and things like that, these concepts that are so convoluted, even, to the point where you feel like a failure all the time because you're not in some nirvana state, right? Well, how about just be here now in this, and honoring every moment. When you start to feel an upset, just pause and know that moment matters. It totally matters. Instead of trying to skip forward or trying to ignore it, it's like, no, wait a minute. And this is how you start to fall in love with yourself, because we're so busy trying to get it from everybody else. It's like, let's just focus on being honoring of how we're feeling. I think there's some place in the Course Jesus talks about how you actually don't think you're worthy of the attention that it takes to turn towards this love. You don't think you're worthy. So you're always trying to fix yourself, So I think that's what what we can do here is really embrace this purpose of stabilization with one another. Like really be in that kind of holy relationship with each other that's not based on anything other than this shared purpose. and to learn to quiet your mind and quiet what you're saying. You know, most of what we say is not worth saying, honestly. And when you start to step back from having to, expound on whatever, you'll be amazed what you start to find. You start to find yourself. You start to find that you don't need to be over in somebody else's mind and seeing what they're doing. It's like, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And, and from a spiritual standpoint, they're really blah, blah, blah. It's like, where are you in that moment? You're over trying to get away from your own pain on some level, your own discomfort, by seeing the discomfort or the air across the room in somebody else. It's like, oh my God, there's nothing better than just being present. We're just pulling back and knowing, I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to help anything. Miracles should be performed under Christ's control, which means you can't help but open your mouth. But you know the difference between the false self coming through and giving advice and trying to help, or pointing out an error in your brother. It's an amazing section in the Course in Miracles about pointing out the error in your brother. I mean, it's profound. And comparison thoughts are food for the ego, literally. It keeps it alive. So just to be humble and just to be yourself, it really is just about being yourself, capital S, and letting go of that littleness and kind of claiming this wisdom that dwells within, that wisdom is what we are. And it's time. It's like time to me it seems like it's going super fast, and it's almost like, oh, I'm on my deathbed, but I'm not in bed, but it's happening really quick, and I just want to so embrace every moment now with everything, whether it's a bird singing, or flower blooming, or just looking around and going, wow, I have so many symbols of love and appreciation around me. And I don't care how in seeming despair you are, you can look around. I mean, even running water, for God's sakes. I mean, it's like just the gratitude for running water. It's like you start to just see how beautiful everything actually is, and how, at one time I went in deeply into this mystical experience, and I was on my bed, and I was like, oh my God, I was so in love. I was so happy that this bed was underneath me. Like, wow, this bed loves me. And I'd pick up a tissue, and I thought, this tissue is here just to serve my nose. It was just like, and I was not on any type of medicinal. I was just in this experience. And that's really all the plant medicine does. It opens you up deeper and deeper to this experience of unity and calmness within, We all just want to feel calm and peaceful.
Peace.
And I'll tell you what's very, very powerful to do is, and we'll do this during the meditation too, is to really, really see that when you're sitting in any situation, by yourself, with others, if there's any kind of feeling of anxiety, just even subtly, maybe you're so used to it, like you just live with it, right? If you go into a group of people and you sit down, how do you feel? This is called being with yourself. Like paying more attention to yourself than anything else. Like, how am I feeling in this moment? Do I feel anxiety? And you know what that anxiety is? That anxiety is simply the idea and the belief in the mind of separation. It goes all the way back. And maybe it can be like, you trace it back to your childhood, and there was an imprinting, you were punished by your first grade teacher, whatever, and you feel this anxiety. But it goes back before that. That's still a projection of that tiny mad idea. So we want to be with that feeling of anxiety in such a present way, not trying to fix it, not trying to make it go away. Just be with it. And as you do that, and that's what we call alchemy or miracle working, it's like you start to actually see that it's not you, that there's something looking upon it, right? And we hear these words, everybody's heard these words, okay? Everybody's heard these words, and for some reason you might still be going to YouTube and trying to find the words again to tell you again, to be present. Okay, well, what does that even mean? Well, I think it can be very, very simple. It's spending time with yourself, and that's what we do in our silent retreats, is people are not used to spending time with themselves, and it freaks them out. Because it's like everything that's not quiet comes to the surface. Everything that they, cooked over, shopped over, had relationships with over top of this, it's over top of that little feeling inside of you that is perhaps just a low-level anxiety that you live with. Well, I'll tell you what, underneath it is full-blown terror. But let it come in. Let it come up. Let it wash through you. And you'll start to see that you are the presence of all that is. And maybe that's way too woo-woo abstract. How about just like, if you look at your whole life, if you just sit and you look at your whole life and all the scenarios and all the good times and all the bad times, there was something else present there that wasn't at effect of any of it. And that's what we are. That's what we want to get in touch with. That's like becoming the dreamer of the dream instead of the dream figure in the dream trying to awaken. That is an endless, endless search. And I'll probably say that every time we're together. Because I experienced it for years, you guys. I was the seeker trying to wake up. I was a seeker trying to wake up. And then I realized, oh my God, that's never ever going to happen. There's never going to be any fruition in that. I am awake came in. I'm tempted to sleep. That's the point of truth and power. We are the truth, the way, the truth, and the life, and we're caught in this idea of sleeping, of duality. And as we align more with I am awake and I'm tempted to sleep, then you come from a point of power. And that point of power can pull you back into itself. Okay, I want to go with that. I want to step back and let the truth of who I am lead the way. And you can start to take these lessons and make them much more like, I will step back and let the wisdom within lead the way. That I can feel that more than let him lead the way. Before I had to have let him lead the way because that's as far as I could go in my mind, that something else was greater than myself. But now it's like, wisdom within, light within. I am the way, the truth, and the life. All the things that are upsetting, all the things still believed in, all the thoughts believed in can come into this presence now. And that is coming in touch with your true power. Your grandeur. Your grandeur. And there's a lot of resistance to that because, we've played small for so long. We think there's some sort of virtue in it. So it can get very, very inspiring, and as you learn to be with yourself in a very, very deep way, and you walk into a room and you can feel that anxiety, you just be with it, and you close your mouth, and you don't have to interact, especially where we all live. I think everybody has that permission, right? Which is such a gift. It's like, and it doesn't matter what people say about you. How about that one? That's freedom. Yeah, you could be right about that. Let everybody be right. And there's that part in the Course. I always quote the Course wrong, but you'll get what I'm saying. The part about I do not know the thing I am, therefore I do not know how to respond. God, there's a lot of relief in that. So just practice. Become a practitioner of the Course, not a student, not a teacher. Just become a practitioner of forgiveness and the deep recognition that you do this to yourself and this you can undo. And the only thing that won't undo it is the identification with the false self. Because it doesn't want to undo it. It doesn't want to. It's very stubborn. But not really. Not when you're onto it. It's like, oh, no, I don't need to do that. So one of my favorite lines also in the Course is, the self will tell you of itself, right? As you go through this seeming process of forgiveness and recognizing the faults as faults, that's why, we never really focused on love and happiness when I was with David. We never focused on that. We're really there to undo the self-concept. And so as you forgive, then the truth of who you are organically just starts to arise within, and then you just find that you're happier and happier and happier. But it's not by effort or trying to cultivate happiness. It's like you just forgive, and then the truth of who you are shows up in this blazing light and this peace and this kind of ordinariness. That is my experience. And yet it's so stress-free that it takes your breath away, because you don't have to plan anything ever again. You don't have to do anything. It's like, oh my God, that is a whole new experience than what we were trained to do. And so it's also not to skip steps if you really believe that, that so and so did something and they wronged you, or something happened. It's to work very deeply with that belief, with a lot of patience and compassion. But work it with somebody that can hold the light for you. Work it with somebody, and if you don't have somebody, you work it with the Spirit, because I'll tell you what, the deepest prayers I've ever had, when I just lay out how I truly feel, not how I want to feel, not how I want to show up as some spiritual cardboard cutout of how I think I'm supposed to be feeling. No, you lay down in your rawness with the Holy Spirit, with the light within, and you pray out like, I need help with this. But you have to want that help. You have to want the peace of God more than you want your next breath. And guess what? Then the prayer is truly pure, and then you will be answered, and you will be answered immediately. And the only reason you're not answered is because you still want the grievance. And that's kind of hard to hear sometimes, but it's the truth. That's why I think it's so beautiful what we've come to in AOA is let us recognize this as a projection. Because once you recognize it's a projection of this fear in the mind, then you can undo it a lot easier. Like, oh, you're just mirroring back to me my own beliefs. Thank you. That's why gratitude is the only appropriate response to your brother. I never understood that until I started using those ones that triggered me to the max for forgiveness. And then I saw, oh, they're just showing me my own confusion. Not bad, not, it's just confusion. It's innocent underneath it. We're just trying to protect something. We don't need to protect who we are. But we've been doing it our whole life. So it's kind of a, when Jesus says this is a total reversal of thinking, he means it. It's like, oh, haven't reversed that one yet. And in the meditation, once again, it's very helpful to start really going deeper and deeper into this practice of being with yourself. And, we call it meditation. There's nothing that we're teaching around some type of formal meditation. If that works for you, go ahead and do that. But maybe open yourself up to just being with how you're feeling in this moment, what's happening in your mind, where your mind is at, and just real true allowance, just a deep allowance of just be here now. Just be here completely with yourself, with the birds, the trucks going by, the whatever's happening outside of this room. And if there's that feeling of uneasiness on any level within you, And then just simply sit like you would sit with a child who's upset, and just almost like wrapping it in a warm blanket, and saying it's okay to be here. I'm not going to try to fix you. I'm not going to try to tell you there's something that you should be doing. It's kind of a deep relaxation, okay?